thanks again for joining. So today, for the next 30 to 40 minutes of time, I'll try to cover up an interesting and very needed one for undergraduate, be it undergraduate or postgraduate or any graduate students in any discipline, be it in optometry or if you have joined from other discipline of healthcare. This is an interesting talk where I have tried to put out all the necessary things that needs to get into a research proposal, be it your thesis proposal or it can be a grant application as well. So I, Dr. Gopinath, work as associate research associate at Achyuta Institute of Optometry, and I'm also the founder of Opto Research Consultancy Services. And let me start the talk. So this is the overview of the entire presentation. So you will, at the end of this talk, you will understand what are objectives of our proposal, what are the different types of proposals you can write, what has to be highlighted in a proposal, what are the benefits of having a research proposal before you start your research, and what you need to do before doing or writing a proposal, and what are the good proposals should consist of, and some of the common mistakes to be avoided in a proposal. So I'm going to split the talk into two different aspects. First being the components of research proposal, where you will see the steps in developing a research proposal. And if time permits, I will try to review a published research protocol, and we can compare with the slide deck, which will be circulated to you in the meantime. So what is a research proposal? So it is a document that provides a detailed description or a summary of research you want to do, and what are the objectives of our proposal, and it should clearly mention why it is done, be it any research, what will be done in the research, how it will be done, and what is expected. So why it is done is your introduction or the research question you have brought up with. What will be done and how it will be done being the methodological aspects, and what is expected is the research outcomes or the anticipated outcomes from your research. So research proposals are broadly classified into two different types. Either it can be academic or institutional proposal or funded proposal. When it comes to academic proposal, it is the undergraduate or postgraduate research proposal, and it can be doctoral or postdoctoral. Sometimes it is a faculty driven, where if you are a faculty member, you are in working in an academic institution, and it can be a faculty driven where you want to do it as individual or collaborative research. When it comes to funded or sponsored proposal, it is again broadly classified into three different types. First being the seed money provided by your institution, or any institution has like some support for the faculty members, so that can be converted as a proposal. And second being the government granting agencies supports a lot of granting proposals, where I have listed it here in the subsequent slides. And private sectors, basically they involved in drug industries and manufacturers. So that is again totally a different field, and it's not always written in that way. So if you see this flow chart here, so you have a project area, you find funding and write an application, you apply it, and if it gets rejected, again you revamp the project area. Again the circle is continuous. If you are able to get the money and you do the actual research, from the research you will end up with multiple new findings, and that you want again propose as a project area. So that's when your government granting agencies and private sectors get involved. Otherwise, usually for academic and the institutional level proposals, this is not always mandated. So before I begin, this is the structure where you start with your research. So I'm not going to get involved in the first 4 or 5 steps, because that's again a different topic as well. So choosing your research topic, narrowing down to find a proper research question, and develop the research question into a hypothesis and try to answer them with different methodology. That's when you start writing the research proposal. So today's talk is mostly towards the last point on how to write a proposal. So key points to be highlighted in a proposal are: You have to raise the question to be researched and clarify its importance. That should be there. And the research proposal should have the existing knowledge from the previous literatures, and you should be able to formulate the hypothesis and objectives from the previous literature. There should be clarity on the ethical consideration. The methodology you are suggesting should be achievable, and you should also list the requirements and limitations on achieving the objectives. So, what are the benefits of having a research proposal? You plan and review the project steps in a consecutively, because you are going to do it in a logical way that is going to be a guide toward the research. So if you start with an empty paper, that's not going to help you. And if you have the questions or the research written in a proper way, you understand the need, you understand the limitations, and you proceed with it. So that's the reason you always should have the research proposal before you start any research. And before you start, what you want to study and why should be a clarification should be there. How is it significant in the subject you are covered? So you can work in a macular degeneration, you can work in corneal diseases, or be it in a dispensing related aspect, or it can be in academia, education related. How significant is the subject, and that should be very much covered in the proposal. And what are the problems, how it will help you solve, and how it helps to build upon a further research should be the start of any research project, and how exactly you are going to plan and get it done in the time available or the time given during your studies. So before you start, the basic thing is framing your research question. The framing research question involves the PCOT. Most of you might be familiar with this term PCOT. If you are not aware, P stands for the population you want to study. Say you want to study the keratoconus patients, and intervention being, okay, you want to give an intervention of PK, that is penetrating keratoplasty. I believe most of your vision science team. So that's the reason I'm taking a vision related example or ocular diseases related example. So you have an intervention of penetrating keratoplasty, and you want to compare with new form of keratoplasty, and outcome expected is the how much of the disease is going to the disease progression is controlled, or the visual acuity is going to get improved, or the quality of life is getting improved. So those are the aspects you are supposed to discuss in the framing a research question, and how much is the time bound. So before even you start doing your research proposal, all these aspects has to be properly explained. And you should also understand something called a finer technique. That's again a very nice one. I most of the time I follow these when I write a research question. And basically it should be feasible, it should be interesting to the community or involved in, or the peers. It should be a novel idea, and it should have ethical consideration and relevant to the current matters. So even if you are not able to achieve all the 5 points, at least having 3 to 4 points matching with your research question will help you get a good grant proposal or get an approval from your supervisor if you are a postgraduate or a PhD scholar. And again, before you start, you are supposed to do a good literature review. I'm not going to explain how we are going to do a literature review. So most of you have access to PubMed and Cochrane Library. If you are fortunate enough, if your academic institution has the support for Scopus or Web of Science subscription, then you do the thorough literature, try to frame the research question using the PCOT, that is population, intervention, comparison, outcome and time, that formula, and the final one, that is feasibility, should be interesting, novel, ethical and relevant. So you do the literature review and come up with a research question, and then you start the research proposal. So coming to the key aspect of today's talk, that is the components of research proposal. There are 14 components. Some of them may not be really required for your proposal. Say it may not have a preliminary study, it may not have budgeting, so and you need not explicitly express how you are going to disseminate. but we will look into the each slide, each of the component closely. Coming to the first one, that is the title of the study. So title has to be accurate, short, concise, attention grabbing, and reliable. So you cannot write like stories in the title, and always title should express these three things: what is the study about, who are the targets, and where is the study setting. So if you are able to give these three key points within 12 to 15 words, that becomes the very nice title, and it has a clear objective and information about the topic that attracts the granting as well as the subject experts from your field. Coming to the second point, that is the introduction, or basically the reviewing your literature. And you cannot bushing around the thing, like there should be a very straight refer to the subject straightforward, and you take up the recent evidence available on a particular topic. Again, I'm speaking to something like, okay, diabetic retinopathy you want to speak about. There should be a recent evidence on diabetic retinopathy. If you are focused only in Tamil Nadu, since I'm placed in Tamil Nadu, I'm giving an example of Tamil Nadu. Go and look at the published evidences published only from Tamil Nadu. If you are going to look at South India, take 2-3 papers from Kerala, Karnataka, and if you want to take up the entire nation, go for a multi-centric study where it has talked about diabetic retinopathy, or take a systematic review. So you list down the positives, negatives, as well as the limitations which are produced or expressed in the particular paper, and then you do the literature review. So once you have always the introduction has two to three paragraphs. So you start with the basic introduction about the disease condition, go with the evidences available, and do the literature review. Usually take the most recent publication and find the gaps. That leads to the aim of the paper. So last paragraph of the introduction and the last couple of lines should lead to the aim of the what you want to study. So once you found the introduction and you have the clear aim, then you have to write the research gaps and statement of problem. So basically, statement of problem is what is missing information, or what has not been studied. So what exactly you want to study from what is available, why is it worth studying, and what is the new understanding you are going to get from the entire research. So that's all these 3 points should be very nicely expressed in the proposal. And there is something called rationale. It should reflect the relevance and importance of study. You can say, okay, some of the same research was done in United Kingdom or in Western population or in South Africa. You want to study it in Asian population specific to South India. That has to be very nicely put up, and how it is going to help you in the practical application. Practical application in vision science is basically the clinical support. So how it is going to impact or change the clinical support, that should be nicely written in the rationale. And again, the benefits from the study can be a contribution to a solution, like a problem or policy formation. So that has to be very nicely written in the research gap or need of the study. Coming to the fourth point, that is the aim and objectives, that should include the primary as well as the secondary outcomes. So usually the aim of the study is you want to concise and tell what exactly you are going to do the entire project. So you want to, as I was giving an example of diabetic retinopathy. So you want to study, okay, I want to see the diabetic retinopathy, how good is the treatment uptake among people or patients in and around South India, especially in Tamil Nadu. So you want to study that. That should be nicely written as an aim. You can have the aim can start like it can reflect the title. So you can say, okay, you want to study, and you can just copy paste the aim, whatever you have mentioned, like to study the uptake of treatment among the diabetic retinopathy patients in living in rural sector. So you want to study like that, and that can be made as an aim. So you have two different objectives. One first being the primary objective, and second is the secondary objective. So primary objective has the research question: one by one. So you want to study the therapeutic neuropathy uptake. So you can do it in different ways. You can do it in as a questionnaire based. You can do as a qualitative study. You can do the field testing. You can do a survey. So multiple things can be done. So you can, as per your hypothesis and your research problem, you can form the primary objective. It should not be more than 3 to 4, because there is something called again SMART, an acronym which is specific to research objective. So your objective is ideally should be specific, measurable, and achievable, realistic, and time bound. If you do not have a specific, measurable, and thing, and it is you say okay, you want to cross understand the uptake for like 6 months, you want to be there, do it, and it may not be feasible in terms of finance, and it may not be realistic, it may not be able to achieve. So it, again, your research objective, primary or secondary objective, should match with the SMART aspects. And you can start writing your objective like to explore the uptake, to determine the reasons for not taking up, to describe, so to verify. So these are all the common words or phrases you can use it before starting your as a start of your primary objective. And secondary objectives are minor ones studied during the course of the study. So you have already written the proposal and you want to study XYZ parameters 1, 2, 3, and incidentally you are finding some other information and you want to study along with the proposed objective. That can be taken as a secondary objective and it can be studied during the course of the study. So that's about aims and objectives. The next being the core aspect, there is a methodology where most of you tend to make mistakes or not able to convince the ethics committee. So that is the major thing, and I will take more time on explaining these aspects. So coming to the methodology, there is a concept called 5W and 1H. So 5W is like who are the participants or the patients you are going to study, what you want to study, when you want to study, where is the location, be it a community or hospital or laboratory, why you want to study, that's the rationale, and how you are going to study, whether you are going to do instrumentation aspects or you are going to collect blood or you are going to assess their intervention, you are going to give injection ophthalmology is included. You don't design. So what is the study design you want to study? You should have a proper selection of it to have a reliable and valid scientific results. So you cannot say, okay, I want to do a qualitative and quantitative together when there is no need of doing that kind of thing. So you should be very specific. You should discuss with your peers, faculty members, or look at the previous literature, what they have really done, whether it is a cross-sectional case control cohort. So I believe most of you have seen this in epidemiological or research methodology classes. Cross-sectional you take one time, cohort case control you have patient with disease and not disease. Cohort is like from the cross-sectional you follow them after 6 months, that is cohort. Interventional you give some therapy, vision therapy, be it or injection in diabetic retinopathy, whether you are going to have it as a randomized control trial or non-randomized, or it measures as well as qualitative study. And you should give you something and useful for pilot studies and tool validation. So depending on the purpose of the study, for the just good understanding of the students, for better understanding, I have given a table where depending on the purpose in study population, you should inclusion should have whom you want to select, exclusion should have whom you want, whom not to select as your study participants. Inclusion criteria usually have the gender, age, what are the disease condition, if you are having healthy individual, and you can also have a questionnaire criteria. What I mean by questionnaire criteria is like, so you want to study the cognitive ability of a patient, and you have like, there is something called MMSC, mini mental score examination, which assess the cognitive score. So you can say, okay, cognitive score, whoever takes more than 23 number, they will be included, and those whose cognitive score is less than 23 will be excluded. So all those information should be mentioned in the inclusion criteria. When it comes to exclusion, again, whom you do not want to take as disease condition, should also mention, you will exclude those who have lost their follow-up, as well as who are not willing to participate. So this has to be very clearly mentioned in the study population, and it's better to give the operational definition. What I mean by operational definition is like, so as per your decision, as per your research knowledge or your expertise, you decide which definition you want to take. So if there are multiple definitions for ARMD, say there is AREDS classification by 3D et al. Provided in 2002 or so. The later ones are available. So which classification you want to take? As per that, okay, you can classify the AMD like early AMD, intermediate, and late. There are classification like early, intermediate, advanced. There is a classification like dry AMD and wet AMD. So which definition you want to take, that should be very clearly explained as an operational definition. And coming to the sampling technique, that depends on the study design. If you are having a probability you can have either probability or non-probability sampling, depending on the, as again, it depends totally on the study design. If, for example, if you want to do a qualitative study, there are two options: convenience sampling and purposive sampling can be chosen. So you decide the study design and go with the sampling technique. And next is the another important one, that is the study location or the setting where you want to do. So it can be a hospital based, community, especially you want to go for a camp and collect data, or you are going for you are doing it in a lab. So if you are collecting samples like tear drops, like beat in there are some studies looking at the keratoconus profiling, how the tear drops differ. So they take that TS sample and process it in the lab. So also you can mention whether you're going to do it in the residence. So there are a couple of projects I have seen, like elderly assessment. So you go to the houses of the elderly people who are not able to move around. So you do the study there and do the entire assessment, so that you have to very clearly mention where is the study location or the study setting. Next is the sample size. I think many of you get confused or get tensed looking at the sample size calculation. It's better to involve statistician if you are not able to do it. And please remember, you should always have a sample size calculator with a power at least of 80%, and always do a pilot study. If you are doing something very new, you don't know what to do. Otherwise, you can take the three key aspects in sample size calculation is the prevalence of a particular disease, standard deviation, and look at the margin of error. With that, you can decide, okay, how is the effect size, whether you want to include more subject or less subject. So that can be decided. And you should always have a justification. Say if you are having a very rare disease and you want to tell, okay, I can only collect 20 or samples for this project, and you should be able to tell that, okay, there is a very less prevalence of the study, that's the reason you want to do it. And you can also see like there are psychophysical experiments and visual science in vision science, where some of the experiments takes more than 2 to 3 hours of time. So when a participant does it for 2 to 3 hours, there will be like thousands and 2,000 thousands, more than thousand of trials running on a same patient. So more the trials, better is going to be the data. So that in that aspect also you can say, okay, you have a proper justification how we want to choose and how you want to decide the sample size. Next is the study duration. and it can vary from months to years depending on the study design and methodology you are proposing. Usually, the undergraduate, postgraduate theses are like given time of 1 to 1.5 years, and PhDs are like 2 to 2.5 years. And depending, again, it depends on the objective. Usually, the PhD studies, especially the data collection, completes within 2 years. And whether it is a funded research or not, depending on the specified deadlines provided by the granting agency, the study duration varies. And also, you are supposed to mention if it is an interventional study, especially if you are involving drugs. You have to mention both the scientific and brand name of the drug, name of the manufacturing company, which city and the country, and also mention the drug group, dosage, frequency of administration, and total duration of treatment with the particular drug. So, if you are involved along with an ophthalmologist or a tertiary eye care hospital, in your proposal you want to study effect of some non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug on a patient with say like central serous retinopathy, and you want to mention you are going to use the new drug or a new usage drug route. So you have to clearly mention all these details, otherwise you will not be able to get a good support from the ethical aspect. So coming to the next key aspect, that is the ethical consideration and approvals. I think many of you have faced struggles in ethical consideration, especially getting approvals. So I suggest any study you want to perform, go for ethical approval, because most of the international and national journals, be it in India or reputed peer review journals outside India, they expect your ethical approval number along with your manuscript. So if you don't start before you start your research proposal, so ethical approval is like before you recruit your first participant, you are supposed to get the ethical approval. It can be a human or animal. It can have either institutional or private. So depending on where you are associated, if you are a private practitioner, you can go with the private institutional committee. If you are an academician, you go with the institutional ethics committee. So along with the institutional ethics committee, you are supposed to register your clinical trial registry India prospect. That is the for any prospective study. So if you go to CTRI website, you can have a clear understanding what are the requirements. So they basically ask for the similar kind of proposal. So whatever you are mentioning in the proposal, same things we are supposed to mention there, along with whether there is any minor risk involved, whether there is major risk involved, whether you are going to collect the blood sample, all those things has to be explicitly written, and you are supposed to attach the ethics committee approval letter along with the CTR in the CTRI website, so that you get the approval of CTRI, ideally be it in any reputed institution, be it in India or outside. Only after getting a registry done, you are supposed to collect your first participant data. And it is very, as I explained, it is very important in publication aspect. So what you are supposed to submit in ethical consideration, proper written informed consent has to be attached with your proposal, and it should contain the participant information sheet, which has the justification of research, outline risk and benefits in a very layman term, whether there are any alternative treatments or approaches, how the data is going to be maintained confidently, the confidentiality of the data. And you should also mention that as a participant, you have the freedom to withdraw from the study whenever they wish to withdraw. So if you are confused where to find the ethical approval, or how can I find a organization where they can give ethical approval, if you go to this website, that is the Central Drug Standard Control of Organization, where there is a separate section called Ethics Committee, and if you get in there, you have the list of registered ethics committees, and once you go there, you can select the state or you can enter the place where you live. So I live at Salem, and I've given the name of Salem. So you can find all the institutional as well as the private ethics committee listed here, and you can connect with them and get support for ethical approval. Usually where like institutions like academic institution or say I was at Manipal, so Manipal Academy of Higher Education sits for ethics committee every month. But I was also at Shankanithalaya where the ethics committee sits only 3 months once. So depending on the requirement need, you have to really sit and connect with the ethics committee and get their details as well and submit your proposals. So that's again a different process as such. So coming to the next point, that is the data collection and how you are going to manage the data. So if you are collecting a retrospective data, basically the medical records, which has been, you are doing it, that has to be attached along with the proposal. And if you are doing interviews or focus group discussion for qualitative study, the interview guide has to be attached. Mainly the tools for data collection and the validity and reliability of the instrument has to be very clearly mentioned, because you say, okay, you want to do the data collection with a questionnaire developed by you, and how is the validation. So if you are doing it, and the questionnaire has to be a proper, either adapted from a previous publication or the experts. So that has to be very clearly mentioned. If you are using a laboratory test, usually from the literature you can say, okay, this much of mmHg or values should be will be taken for inclusion, exclusion, all those things. Or you provide descriptions if there is no proper established literature support for your laboratory test. And also mention the list of clinical examinations. Say you will do a comprehensive examination, profiling, all those. This is very important. Description of instruments. If you are using Humphrey Visual Field Analyzer, you should mention what is the name of the manufacturer, which year it was launched, and which city it is from, the country it is from. All those have to be mentioned on the description of instrument. And how we are going to manage data. Usually, you can manage the data in terms of paper, Excel, or cloud online. And if it is in a paper, I think most of us are not using papers for storing the data. If you are using it, keep it, try to make it as digitalized. And Excel sheet and cloud online, and confidentiality of the data is like, so how many of you are going to handle the data? So if you are having a team of 2, 3 people, and that should be mentioned like statement like only the team members will have the access to the data, and after so and so years, so you have 3 years of data collection. So after that, the data will be either discarded or given back to the academia, or so that has to be very clearly mentioned. Coming to the last couple of things, that is statistical inference. So if you are, it should also involve a statistician if you are not confident, or since many of you are, most of you are associated, if you are associated with an academia, or you have a faculty member, you do the math. That means you take up the previous literature, you know what they have done. So if they have done a parity test, whether they have done repeated measures of ANOVA. So all those has to be very clearly understood. And if you are not confident, please involve statistician. Name all the variables you want to collect, and try to give anticipated analysis there. So as per if it is going to be a parametric data, if it is the data is normally distributed, you will use the parametric data analysis. Or if it is non-normally distributed, you will use non-parametric test. So if you are comparing two different data points, that on a same patient you will do parity test, so something like that, all those has to be written as a sentence. And if you are using a qualitative research methodology, a thematic analysis will be done. So action plan in terms of analysis has to be given, or anticipate and provide the action plan. And software to be used, and what software you're going to use it for. Statistical analysis, be it like most commonly used is the FPSF. And if you are associated with an institution, please check for licenses. If you are using a cracked version of any software, and if your university is in the up ranking place, like in the QS ranking, there is something called QS ranking, where universities are usually ranked. And if they come to know, okay, you are using a cracked version, if you are submitting for a publication, they want to check, okay, whether the university really has the license, then there will be a problem. So always check with the institution what is the license available for the particular software and the version, whether you are using it properly or not. And preliminary studies which may not be required for your research proposal, only if you going for a industry or government funded proposal. If you have done a preliminary study, then there is a good or high chance for the grant to be approved, and also it helps to lead your pilot studies. Coming to the budget, so financial budget is very important aspect where the money which is required to conduct and complete the study should be mentioned. It can be a seed money for the institution or from the granting agencies. So what has to go into the budget of funding? So the total money should be broken up into different heads and subheads, like how much money you want for acquiring an instrument, how much money you are going to use it for comprehensive examination, say like data collection or sample collection or field work. If you have to have a travel and local transport expenses, that should be mentioned. And if you are going to use the money for some conferences, be it as registration or travel support, that should be split up. There should be a split up on that. And most of many high reputed journals are going forward for open access. That is where you are supposed to, as a researcher, you are supposed to pay as an article processing charge. And if you are involving publication aspects later, closing of study, that should be mentioned, and other stationery and overhead charges. And if you are going, if any faculty or is planning to recruit a research scholar, so the split up for the junior research fellow and senior research fellow salary has to be mentioned. And whichever is given in dark black, those are all Indian organizations. So you have plenty of organization where you can get fundings. So one clean suggestion from my side, if you want to take up funding agents, if you want to build a, you have to build a team. Like it can be a multidisciplinary team to grab any research funding. And whichever is in red color is the international as well as Indian level organization where you can still get funding. And next is the timeline where you are going to give, okay, how much time you are going to use for writing the preliminary work or proposal. So you will be doing, so this was my PhD Gantt chart where you can see, okay, for the entire 3 years, that is from the day one, sorry, from day one till the last year, that is the 36th month, I'll be doing literature review, how much time is spent for the objective one, how much time will be spent for objective two. As you can see, there is an overlap between the objective one and two. And three, how, when will it be done, and how we are going to disseminate the results as a conference aspect, journal, and how we are going to write the thesis, and how, when you are going to submit the thesis. So all those things, if you have it as a timeline, that then that's a very nice way of having a deadline. And how you are going, so you have done all these things, and you want to disseminate your research work. So you can do it in two different ways. That is knowledge translation. So you can prepare handouts. So there is like myopia research is in the boom. Like everyone is talking about myopia, but the awareness about myopia and the blindness due to myopia is very less compared to other diseases. Like, and that you can prepare handouts, fact sheets, and do public presentation either in schools or and publication on index and peer reviewed journals. I would suggest go only with peer reviewed and index journal. And you also have the conference presentation where you can do it in national or international level. And next is the another important aspect, that is a reference. So you have written the proposal, but if you fail to recognize someone's information, taken others' research work, then if you don't properly cite them, it becomes a very criminal offense. And if you try to do a plagiarism, that is, you copy paste and claim and say, okay, this is but someone's work, but you try to write it as your work, and if you fail to reference it and acknowledge the others' teamwork, that again is a criminal offense. So how we are going to provide a reference? You have various referencing styles. That is, APA is American Psychological Association, Vancouver, Harvard system. You can follow the institutional requirement or the granting agency requirement